The Pentateuch, or the 5 books that start out the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy or Devarim, was written by Moses. Genesis basically talks about the beginning and how the nations were formed through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Israel. Exodus talks about the children of Israel leaving Egypt, and it's the word Exodus there. Leviticus, the law, is revealed in 10 commandments and so on. And in Numbers, how the Israelites were organized and how many of them they were above the age of 20. In Devarim, the solidification and confirmation of this for the children of Israel. And it goes into the promised land and will bless those who bless Israel, as the Lord says, and curse those who curse Israel. And also you see that in with Balaam and Balak, for instance, the same phrase used with this story, the curse of the children of Israel, causing his donkey, when Balaam tried to curse Israel, his donkey turned aside on the road. And one of the times, because the donkey was actually seeing an angel and didn't want to move forward, this angel, these aren't little tiny Cupid or Valentine's Day angels that they show on certain times of the year or pagan holidays. So this didn't see, the angel didn't see the donkey, and that's why he stopped. And later on he told Balak what he saw, why he stopped. Now after the plague, here in Numbers, you'll see, after the plague, the Lord said to Moses and Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, take census of the whole Israelite community by families. And of course in Numbers, I'm kind of baffled by this, but as I read along, I saw plainly that this was God telling Moses to take the census here, instead of where here in Chronicles, 1 Chronicles 21, David takes a census. It says here, Satan stood up against Israel and moved David to number Israel. So David said to Joab and the leaders of the people, go and number Israel from Beersheba to Dan, then let me know how many people there are. And so after numbering them, says, I obviously came back, I've sinned, and he's repenting of this sin. I've sinned very much by doing this thing, but now I beg you, take away the sin of your servant, for I have done a very foolish thing. And he goes down in verse 11 and he says, so God came to David, this is the prophet of God. So he came to David and said, this is what the Lord says, choose one of these. So he gets the punishments that he gets to choose for sinning against God. And David said to God, I am in much trouble. Let me fall into the hands of the Lord, for his loving kindness is very great. So the chastisement of God, even though it's a punishment, is better than being led or sent into your enemy's hands for punishment. And so the Lord sent a disease upon Israel, and 70,000 men of Israel died. God sent an angel to destroy Jerusalem, but as he was about to destroy it, the Lord saw the trouble and was sorry. So he saw this, he was basically like, okay, I'm not going to do this again. Then the Lord, then in verse 16 it says, then David looked up and saw the angel of the Lord standing between earth and heaven. So this is how huge this angel was. It wasn't like also just a piece of Cupid or a piece of little other pagan angels that they tend to describe in even historical arts and paintings. So the angel had his sword in his hand, and this is also like Genesis, where he had a sword in his hand. If they came back into the garden to eat the food, this would be their destruction. held out over Jerusalem. So this, and in Numbers it talks about the appetite, as far as our appetite is gone. There is nothing at all. And I'm going into a different portion here where it talks about the manna that the children of Israel were eating off, and that fell from the sky. So it says there is nothing at all to look at except this manna. Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance like that of bdellium. The people would go about and gather it and grind it between two millstones, or beat it in the mortar and boil it in the pot and make cakes with it. And its taste was the taste of cakes with boiled oil. So this is the bdellium, like it's the color, resin type of, if any of you ever dealt with essential oils, like you see that some of them are very thick. This is what this was like as far as the color though. And the mortar and pestle, you may see this a lot of the actual images that we have in modern day society is taken from the Bible, and this is like one of those. The mortar and pestle, which is used for RX or prescription, often is actually what they were talking about here when it says the mortar, that it was grind in. And so here we have, as far as another image that was taken from the Bible, the serpent, where it was held up on a stick in Numbers 21 verse 6, and also in John 3 verse 4 was also made mention of that. And then I'll read it here in Numbers 21 verse 6. Then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said that we sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us. So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, make a snake and put it up on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live. So Moses made a bronze snake and put it on a pole. Then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. And you can also see here a symbol that you may also see in the medical or healthcare field, the snake, serpent on a stick. Also, what this is, where Jesus says that if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me, is also a symbol of what this represents. See here. And this is something that is very prevalent also in the medical community. For as far as the cancellation of debt, I talked about that and recent credit repair or credit fixing portfolio with Experian and the different credit bureaus. Now at the end, where they get this from, the 7 years statute of limitation, where you pass the 7 years and you've had this thing on your credit for 7 years or more, they are required to remove it. This is where in Deuteronomy 15 you can see a portion of that. It says at the end of every 7 years you must cancel debts. This is how it is to be done. Every creditor shall cancel any loan they have made to a fellow Israelite. They shall not require payment from anyone among their own people, because the Lord's time for canceling debts has been proclaimed. You may require payment for a foreigner, but you must cancel any debt your fellow Israelite owes you. However, there need be no poor people among you, for in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess as your inheritance. He will richly bless you. And it's also if you only fully obey the Lord. So this comes with obedience is better than sacrifice, which I have an issue with apparently as well. And also it talks about occult practices in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18, verse 9. It talks about when you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not learn to imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritist, or who consults the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Because of these same detestable practices, the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. Now it talks about the nations in verse 14. You will disposes the nations you will dispose is listen to those who practice sorcery or divination. But as for you, the Lord your God has permitted you to do so. The Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. So the nations around you may practice these stuff, but you are not to do it. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your fellow Israelites. Now, as I mentioned, these 5 books, the Torah, Pentateuch, are written by Moses. So that's who he's referencing to there. And it talks about like sort of a more of a legal aspect, premeditated murder, even though it's called the city of refuge here. This is the rule concerning in Deuteronomy 19 verse 4. It says, this is the rule concerning anyone who kills a person and flees there for safety. Anyone who kills a neighbor unintentionally, without malice, out of forethought. For instance, a man may go into the forest with his neighbor to cut wood, and as he swings his axe to fell on a tree, the head may fly off and hit his neighbor and kill him. So as he swings his axe, the head falls off. It's totally accidental, not intentional. And that man may flee to one of these cities and save his life. Now, these are the 3 cities of refuge that the Lord has declared that they can have, and not deserving. In the end of verse 6, it says, not deserving of death, since he did it to his neighbor without malice of forethought. So it's not intentional. It's not like premeditated murder. It's total accidental. But he still would have to flee, otherwise he would be killed as well. And so for me, a lot of times I tend to wake up like I'm in an autopilot state, and then I wake up when I read something that interests me in the Bible. And my eyes are open, but it's weird. I can't explain it. I have to, I'm actually looking at the words and reading, but I'm more alert, basically, when a verse like this comes along. It's like, spiritually, we are technically being blinded by the spiritual realm, those around us, the fallen angels, those who do not want us to know the truth, do not want us to be godly, do not want us to come into the knowledge of God. So they put sort of like blinders technically on our minds. So it's up to us to pray through it. Like if I'm watching Shark Tank on TV, I'm more alert than if I'm reading the Bible. I tend to fall asleep technically. But here you have a portion, like I'm more of a scientific person. So it talks about the anatomy and physiology, and I just wanted to mention this because I talked to it's the owner of a transcription company, and I was telling him about how I tend to do this. But here it's from Israel. And so here's where it says, then he shall offer from the sacrifice of the peace offering, an offering made by fire to the Lord.